I ask that we listen to the longer version of this first reading. I hope it didn't bore you. It's a powerful story, of course, that we're all familiar with, I'm sure. I think these two readings that we listen to might be the most pro-feminist or feminist, whatever you want to call it, passages in the Bible. The one from the Old Testament and the one from the New. The stories that we read in the book of Daniel are largely folk tales that are collected under the heading of Daniel. And Daniel is a folk figure. His time and place isn't very well determined. Much of the context that we read in the book of Daniel is from the Babylonian exile, when the people of Israel were living there on the rivers of Babylon, and they were struggling with the oppression of that life and that distance from their homeland. But we also hear passages that place Daniel in the time of the two kingdoms, when the northern kingdom of Israel was separated from the southern kingdom of Judah. We hear both of those elements in this passage, in this that we listen to. The elders of whom the Lord said, wickedness has come out of Babylon. In the form of these two elders, they're part of the exile. And then later on, when the two judges are being examined by Daniel, the second one, it's worth noting, I think, with what confidence and firmness Daniel condemns them and challenges them. It seems that the Holy Spirit not only inspired wisdom in him to do the examination, separating the two men, but it gave him a fullness of confidence. And he says, offspring of Canaan, not of Judah, beauty has seduced you. He says, this is how you acted with the daughters of Israel. And in their fear, they yielded to you. But a daughter of Judah did not tolerate your wickedness. So the northern country, Israel, Daniel is insulting them by saying that the women are fearful and subservient or submissive. But a daughter of Judah stands tall like a lioness, and she does not yield. She does not tolerate their wickedness. Anyway, it's just it's interesting to see how the story has its place, not so much in historical fact, but in kind of a folk tale. The point, of course, is blessing God for those who have hope in him, have their victory, even against judges, not just elders, but judges of the people. The gospel, of course, is another very famous story about this woman caught in adultery. The penalty, both for Susanna and for this woman, would have been stoning. It would have been something, if they're caught in the act, so to speak, then the condemnation and the stoning would have occurred immediately. And that's the situation Jesus finds himself in with this woman. The scribes and the Pharisees don't stone her immediately, which is unusual. They bring her to the temple to confront Jesus. They want to trap Jesus, and this is their pattern regularly now. And Jesus bends down and writes in the sand or in the dust. Ever since I was a child, I've wondered, what in the world would he have written? What was going on there? It never made any sense to me. And then a few years ago, I saw a beautiful movie called Timbuktu. If you ever get a chance to watch it, it's fascinating. It's just a kind of a day-in-the-life story about the people of Timbuktu these days and the difficulties they face so much with Al-Qaeda and other terrorist Muslim organizations in their region. There's one scene, however, where a woman goes up a sand hill, a desert sand dune, in order to get reception for her cell phone, because where she lives, there's no reception around. But if you go high up on the sand dune, you can get some reception. But sometimes you have to wait. So she goes up on this sand dune trying to get reception, and there's no reception yet. And so she crouches down and starts writing in the sand. And it just struck me, that's what Jesus is doing. He crouches down and writes in the sand because he's completely bored with these people. He has nothing to do with their mentality. He wants nothing to do with this condemnatory attitude and this striving for violence against each other. He completely brushes his hands of it. And he waits for something better. So here he is, with their constant pestering him. He stands and says, let the one among you who is without sin cast the first stone, be the first to throw a stone at her. It's a challenge. And of course, none of them are up to it. They recognize in themselves their own sinfulness. That's exactly what we have to do when we feel condemnatory towards someone who we just cannot understand how they could possibly do that, who we believe should be condemned to death immediately 1,000 times over. We are asked to love that person and pray for that person. We are never instructed to condemn, not by Jesus. So this is the Jesus we see and we follow in this Lenten season. And we focus in on who he is and what he is, how he acts, how he doesn't act. Go, and from now on, do not sin anymore. That's all he says. And that's all we can do as well, is go forward, following in his footsteps with a new life within us.